Hello, I'm Mark. We're doing a walk-around review of the Rose Graphix 4x4 laser unit. The machine is 9'8" from the back to the front, and it is 7'5" from the left to right side, with another 2-foot control panel on the right-hand side. The base size you're going to need is about a 15 by 15. You're going to need at least an 8-foot ceiling, but that's pretty standard. The door opens to 7 foot 8 inches when fully open. The machine itself is built out of pretty much industrial standard components, so if you damage a part somewhere way in the future, you don't necessarily need to find the original manufacturer for the laser. Most of the parts, like the rack and pinion, are made by Hurion, which is a German company that makes motion control parts, and that's one of many examples of parts that are pretty standard off-the-shelf components that you can purchase to replace parts. The laser power unit is a Raycus RFL C500. It's a 500 watt unit. Since most of these machines are built kind of on the same architecture, this machine will give you a very good example of most of the machines that Rose Graphix and even other companies sell, because most of them are built very similarly. As far as accuracy is concerned, the machine holds to about 1/1000th of an inch, actually sub-1000th of an inch, after you adjust the offset to offset for the thickness of the laser beam. It's only about 4/1000th of an inch, but once you offset it, the parts come out almost perfect every time. That's pretty much it for this side of the machine. We're going to move around now to the other side. Alright, so we're over at the control panel now. It's a computer screen. This operates on a normal computer. It's not like a Haas Mill or something where it has its own controller. There's a computer down here, and this is just a screen. Over here you have your emergency and electric lock. These actually do the same thing. It shuts everything down, but it does keep your cooler on and your computer, so that way you can fix what you're doing. It's just for emergency purposes. Servo enable. If you flip that, the servo's shut off. It's a good way to disconnect it. It comes with a little smaller keyboard, but this is the same size that I'm used to for designing work. So I purchased this one and a mouse. And again, because it's just a computer, I was just able to plug the little Bluetooth sticks into the back of it, and it recognized it, and I was able to just use my regular keyboard. Has a remote control. Most of them have. Most all the units come with the same kind of remote. You can jog it around, and use this for setting up. You can do everything that this remote does on the computer, so if you somehow broke this and you couldn't replace it, you could still do it here, but this is useful for when you're having to purge air and you have to stand behind the machine. But if you didn't have this and you had a partner, you could do it the same way. Little spot alongside to plug the flash drive in, which is very convenient. And
yep, that's it.
Yeah, that's about it for this side. We're going to go to the next side now. So here's the control box. There's kind of two sides to this. This is the computer down here. There's also, I believe this board is what kind of converts the computer signals to operate the servos. So this is kind of one of the more specialized, well, this is a specialized component. But down here is just a computer. It's built kind of unique for this machine, but you could replace it with normal parts if anything got damaged. Yeah, that's it. And up here, don't know if you can see this.
Can I?
Okay, up here is the dang, it's messing me up. Up here is the controller that controls the follow command, so that the laser will follow bows in the material. Again, another e-stop, and here's your power off switch for the machine. Here's the backside of the control box. Pretty much everything in here looks exactly like any other industrial piece of equipment. There are breakers here, contactors here, power supply, a number of filters to keep the, I think it's electromagnetic interference filters. And then down here are your 4 servos, clearly marked, Z-axis, X, and your 2 y-axis servo controls. So that's what drive the servos themselves. And everything in here is built just like you would expect in any other industrial piece of equipment. We're now over on the right-hand side of the machine. I have the gantry moved forward so we can get to this spot. Nice little door with a key, so that way you can keep other employees out of the machine that aren't supposed to be in here. You have your 2 O2 solenoids and a secondary regulator all up in this spot. So you come up here to adjust the regulator for your pierce pressure, and then of course you have the 2 solenoids. One is going to be your full pressure, and the other one is going to be your regulating pressure. And of course on this side is also where all your fiber optic comes, as well as the power to control your servos. All in this nice plastic, I don't know what that stuff's called. It protects it so it doesn't bend or kink. It just keeps it nice and neat. And there's, this is on the y-axis, and it also is on the x and z. All has the same sort of stuff. Here's the water cooler it comes with. The technician is going to preset it for you. It turns on with the machine, so you never have to really come back here and work on this or anything. Here's the back of the water cooling unit. Here's the spot to fill it up with water. There's 2 ins and 2 outs. One of these is for the optical head, because you have to cool your optics so they get hot. And the other one is for your laser unit, because of course it has a lot of lost heat that has to get rid of. There's a sight glass on the back right here to indicate how much fluid is inside the unit, so that way you can keep it at optimum level and know if you've got a leak or something. We're at the back of the machine now. It's a little tight in here because we only left about 18 inches behind the machine. The rear door is about the same as the front door, except it goes straight up instead of back on an angle. In this door, nothing too interesting. This is the top cover for the fiber laser unit to try to keep the dirt out. This is also where you hook up your air vacuum system to suck the laser dirt out of the machine. We have ours piped underneath the machine because where we're exhausting is toward the front. Otherwise you'd, typically come out of this hole over here. I don't know if you can see that, probably not. Yep. And the other cover here is your oil. This is your auto oiler. This keeps most of the machine lubed. You will have to do a few things manually probably, but this does most the regular daily oiling of the machine. Here's the final, this is the left side of the machine. There's 2 windows here that were the same shaded window as everything else, tinted window. We covered it only because we noticed the flash was a little distracting in the shop, and you know, your eye has a tendency of catching it, so we put cardboard over it just to make it so we didn't have to see it all the time. Down here on the bottom is your pull-out chip tray. This is where all your cut-off scraps and garbage and dirt and stuff go. That gets cleaned out every now and then. Alright, so if you're in any country that uses standard voltage is 240 volts, you're going to need this. This is a buck booster or a buck transformer. I've talked to 2 people and they both said different names for the same device. This is a 7.5 kilowatt for the 500 watt unit. Seems to be a little overkill according to my electrician anyway, but it's reasonable to just go ahead and put this one on. This converts, we had 246 volts and it converts it down to 220 volts. Now you're still going to have 2 hots. Chinese or Asian power, I believe it is 220 volt hot to neutral. This is hot to hot. It's a little different, but it works just fine. But you do need this part if you're in the United States. To finish this review off, I wanted to mention a few of the odd things about this laser, simply so that way you're prepared if you're buying one of these, and most of them are going to have this similar issue. This machine came with 8-gauge cable, which is the right size to use for this, but it came with 2-wire. So that's fine to run the machine, but it's not exactly safe. They accomplished grounding with a grounding kit, but having your wires separated offers the ability to damage the grounds and not know it. So the correct cable to use here in this country and many others is 8 gauge 3-wire. Now we used 4 because we're using 110 volt on the lighting circuits in the machine, and we wanted to run them into the same cable. So you're going to need at least 3-wire or 4 if you want. 8 gauge from your plug to a junction box. Now coming down here, there was also this kind of odd thing where they brought the cables together and had them sort of taped in a flying splice sort of manner, which again is not correct, but it was the only other odd thing about this machine. So we brought our cable into here, and we also replaced this one because this is the one that goes to the control box to power it. And then you have this one coming back. Now this is a 4-wire. 2 of the wires, 2 of the conductors go to the laser, and 2 of them go to the cooler. These wires are 3-wire. So you have your 2 power line, your 2 power cables, and a ground. Same on both of these. These are correct. So if you junction into here, you can tie your ground from here, go to your power going to the control box, and to your power going to the cooler and the laser unit, and I have it all correct. But the whole thing is not very expensive. The cable's going to set you back maybe $100 if you buy a bunch of it, and the junction box here is like $11 from any of the big box stores. Then you're going to need a few connectors. This is mostly for your electrician's knowledge. If you show it to him, he'll understand what I'm talking about and be able to get the correct parts. I have also added this fuse in here. This is for my 110 volt for my lights. It comes on when I plug the unit in. That way I can know that I left the unit plugged in and unplug it before I leave, because lightning's a big problem in Florida. Finally, I wanted to mention a couple things, just other little things. The handle on the door is a little light. It'd be good for a lot of things. This door is pretty heavy, so I know it's loose, and you're gonna say tighten. You gotta tighten the bolts, but I have quite a few times, and it's just there's not enough meat on the threads, so they slowly pull out each time you use it. And this door is pretty heavy. It's counterbalanced, but not quite enough. One positive, it has a magnetic latch, so it's just a magnet that holds the door up, which is great because it won't wear out because it's just a magnet. After you lift the door up, it will hold in place just fine, but for safety reasons, I like to use a prop rod, which again is the next thing that's just a little bit on the odd side. There's no real pocket for it to go into. It just kind of wedges. If we come up with a better solution, we'll post it later on down the road. And then the last thing, and again, these are all minor things. You can fix them real easy. I guess one of the last things, actually, there's one more. The airflow on this thing, if you look underneath where the duct pipe attaches to this kind of funnel-shaped tray, there's about a 1-inch gap around it, or 25 millimeter, that we ended up having to use duct tape on that's the metal duct tape to seal it up. And once we did that, we got a lot better airflow to suck the smoke out of the unit, and after we did that, it was pretty good. But that is something you should address and try to seal up all your pipes when you're hooking up your blower. And then one last thing is, this thing has had a pretty long trip by the time you receive it. So a lot of times hardware is a little loose on it. So you're going to want to go and try to check as many of these little fasteners as you can reach and give them a little snug. Just recheck them, make sure they're still tight, because they seem to come loose in transit, and then you don't want stuff falling apart once you start running it. That gets kind of scary.